Lion farming is big business in South Africa. Each year, thousands of cubs are bred in captivity to be hunted and killed. The South African government wants to shut this lucrative industry down. But with farmers not wanting to give up their trade and thousands of lions unable to live in the wild, will this issue ever be resolved? I'm Charlie Frost, and this is what you need to know. Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of What You Need to Know. Joining this week is our correspondent Geraint Vincent, who's just returned from South Africa investigating lion farming for ITV's On Assignment. Welcome to the podcast, Geraint. Many hear farming and think of cows and pigs. Is this essentially the same, but with lions?
Well, I think most people, Charlie, would probably see an ethical difference, wouldn't they, between farming pigs and cows for food, which is what we do, done the world over, and farming animals for the hunt, which is what we're talking about here. These lions are being bred to be shot in what's known as canned hunts, that is, where a kill is guaranteed. So the lion is released into a specific area, in the best case, about 10 square kilometres, a few days before the hunt starts, so it's got some time to acclimatise to its new environment. And then the client, usually accompanied by a professional hunter, will go on foot to hunt the lion, and they'll shoot it with a high-powered rifle. And about somewhere between 600 and 800 lions are shot and hunted in South Africa in this way every year. And this is the industry, the farming of lions, which supplies the prey for that industry. So it's not the same as hunting an animal in the wild. If you go and hunt a lion in the wild, you could spend 2 weeks in the wilds of Tanzania or somewhere like that and not see a lion. The difference here with a canned hunt is that you will see and you will kill the prey that you're after. In terms of the logistics of lion farming, the lion farm that we visited, the welfare standards were relatively good, and to like the layman's eye, the animals looked in extremely good condition. They were kept in enclosures of somewhere between, the size of them was somewhere between a tennis court and a football pitch. One male and two or three females in each pen, and it is the cubs they have that are destined to go on and be hunted. But there are some 350 lion farms in South Africa, and the standards aren't the same in all of them. And animal welfare organisations that we spoke to and we got footage from, there's well-documented examples of lion cubs being born with deformities because they're inbred, lions being fed the wrong kind of thing, wrong kind of food, having to share enclosures with other animals. But as I say, the lion farm we visited, the conditions were very good. The animals looked in great condition, but then perhaps that is not surprising given the fact that these animals are being bred to be trophies, to end up on somebody's wall. So what they look like is the main thing, and that's what they're being bred for, to look beautiful and to look magnificent.
That's part of it, isn't it? People are guaranteed a kill, these people that are paying to do this. So how much are they paying, do you know, to do this, to be guaranteed that kill, to have that trophy on their wall?
So for a black-maned male, which is the most sought-after lion for a hunter, they'll pay between $25,000 and $30,000. So it's quite a lucrative industry. It's an entirely legal industry. The captive breeding of lions in South Africa began back in the 1990s. It's entirely self-regulated. It remains entirely self-regulated. But, there is a market. There is a demand. People do want to go and hunt big game in Southern Africa. And, the big black-maned lion, big male, is the biggest prize. And people will pay good money for that.
So these farmers, they're essentially making good money, but as you say, it's a supply and demand. They'll say there's the want there for it, and they're providing that. But I mean, how do they feel about those ethical questions about breeding such a beautiful animal? I mean, you've spoken with one of them.
Yeah, well, I think the lion breeders that we spoke to, you know, one of the first things they say is that they are absolutely essential. I mean, this will make a lot of conservation campaigners spit out their cup of tea if they're having one. But the lion breeders claim, the captive lion breeders claim that they are essential for preserving the species and preserving the quality of the gene pool of lions in South Africa, because they're very careful about what animal breeds with which animal, and they can do it in a much more targeted and thought out way than happens in the wild, where the gene pool is reducing, so they claim. Conservationists generally dismiss that argument. And I think in terms of their business, lion farmers are very quick to compare themselves with every other type of animal farmer. I spoke to a lion farmer. His name was Christo Gomez. He's a lion breeder in Limpopo in northern South Africa. And this is what he had to say when I tried to question the ethics of his business. Have a listen.
So a lion farm, it's all about, genetics. To get the right genetics is like any other farm. If you're a domestic farmer and you're farming cattle, you are breeding the cattle to get the best beef on the table to be slaughtered, and the same with the hunting industry. There's no difference.
But there is a difference, though, between breeding an animal for food that we need to eat to stay alive, and for sport, isn't there? There's an obvious difference there.
But if it is not for the sportsmen which determine the value of that animal, why would me as a farmer take care of it? Why would I spend that kind of money to take care of that lion? Me as a farmer, why would I invest money into something which I can't benefit out of?
As you've said, this is an entirely legal practice, but the South African government have said they do want to end lion breeding, but that's easier said than done.
Yeah, so the South African government is acting really after kind of years of international opprobrium that at the practice of lion farming for the hunt, and a large amount of domestic protest inside South Africa as well. And I think there's a sense also in the South African government that, the breeding of lions for the hunt and the hunting of these magnificent animals somewhat flies in the face of South Africa's reputation for kind of ecotourism and its hard-won reputation for conservation and preserving species. So they realise that there's a massive contradiction there. So that's part of the motivation for this. But what they've approved is a programme for the voluntary closure of these lion farms. So there's no enforcement on the table at the moment. It does say it's committed to, and it fully intends to see the end of the commercial exploitation of lions. But there's a whole load of questions about the practicalities of this and how they're actually going to do it. What are you going to do with, estimates vary, but it's somewhere between 8,000 and 12,000 captive bred lions currently living in enclosures in South Africa. These are big, dangerous animals. You can't just release them into the wild because there's not enough territory for them to live properly at the moment. There's something like 3,000 or 4,000 lions living wild in South Africa already. There's just not the room to suddenly release, that number of captive bred lions. And there's a big question mark as to whether or not they would flourish in the wild anyway. You could put them into sanctuaries, but that costs a lot of money, and nobody's going to make any money with, 11,000 lions in sanctuaries tomorrow. Another option, and it's not a very nice one, but some welfare campaigners, suggested this to me, that it was a serious option, is to put these animals down. Given that they were bred for the hunt in the first place, it's a much kinder end than, being hunted in the bushland. But the farmers we spoke to all told us that they will fight in the courts to defend the businesses that they've spent years, lifetimes building up and investing in. And the realists among the anti-hunting campaigners are well aware of this problem. Have a listen to what one of them had to say. So this lady's called Linda Park. She's an anti-hunting campaigner.
The elephant in the room for me that nobody wants to speak about, these guys have been conducting a legal business. It was sanctioned by the government. It was helped to thrive by the government. Now all of a sudden the government says, no guys, you can't do this anymore. They're not going to go into the night quietly.
So you've been there, Geraint. You've spoken to people on both sides of this argument. I mean, what do you see happening? Because both can't get what they want, can they?
Well, on the lion breeders' side, as well as their contested claims about how they play a vital part in the conservation of the lion, they say that big game hunting is part of the tradition, part of the history, part of the culture in Southern Africa. It will never end. It will always go on, they say, somehow. Better that it is supplied by responsible breeders who are concerned with animal welfare and protecting species, which they say they are. There are lots of anti-hunting campaigners who reject those arguments. One animal welfare campaigner we spoke to talked about a compromise, which she herself said that, you know, a lot of people in conservation, you know, would not like her for proposing. But she calls it the ranching of lions. That is, you know, breeding lions and having them live as wild a life as possible on reserves, big game reserves of the kind that exist at the moment in South Africa, but hunting is outlawed on them. You'd essentially have hunting allowed on some of these reserves so that these lions live as wild a life as possible, and the hunting is controlled in that way. And the practice of canned hunting, as it exists at the moment, will come to an end because we're talking about a much, much bigger area. That would entail the end of the lion farming business as it goes on today, but it would mean that the hunting of these animals would continue. It's a solution that probably nobody in the argument in the debate would embrace, but it's a compromise solution and one that perhaps worthy of consideration.
A lot still to resolve there, Geraint. Thank you very much. For more on this, head over to On Assignment on ITVX and also the newsreel there to see a shorter version of Geraint's report from South Africa. And while you're there, have a look back through our other quick briefings on a range of headline topics to find out what you need to know. Until next time, thank you for listening.